Hello everyone, hope you're having an amazing day. This is Shravan Sar. So today I'm going to teach you a very important chapter of 11th class chemistry, which is chemical bonding and molecular structure. So in this chapter we'll be discussing various types of chemical bonds, why elements form chemical bond, why certain elements do not form chemical bonds, whereas certain elements, very few elements, they form chemical bond with very difficulty. So we will be getting answer to all these questions in this chapter, and with this we will be elucidating the structures of some molecules. So let us first discuss what is a chemical bond. So let us write the definition first, then we will understand. Chemical bond, it is an attractive force which holds together different constituents that may be atoms or ions in different chemical species is called chemical bond. So chemical bond, literally it means an attractive force that holds together, that keeps together either atoms or ions together in a chemical compound. So I have written here in different chemical species. So chemical species that may be molecules or compounds. For example, I am writing some molecules like hydrogen H2, oxygen O2, nitrogen N2. These are the molecules. And molecules of compounds like HCl, hydrochloric acid, water, you can take sugar also, C6, H12, O6. So these are all molecules, and in these molecules we see multiple atoms. The atoms either of the same element in the left side or atoms of different elements, they are together in a molecule. So the thing which keeps them together is a chemical bond. Here two hydrogen atoms are staying together, and what makes them stay together is a chemical bond. Here one hydrogen and one chlorine atom are connected and they form a separate entity. That's called a chemical bond. So we'll be discussing the different types of chemical bond and why chemical bonds are formed. So in order to get the answer why chemical bond is formed, we have to keep in mind certain things. First of all, we have to keep in mind that the electrons present in the valence shell, that means the outermost shell, they form chemical bond or they participate in chemical bonding. And one more important thing which was suggested by Kossel and Lewis, that atoms have a tendency to form 8 electron configuration in its outermost shell. That is why elements or atoms have the tendency to form chemical bond. 8 electron in the outermost shell is called octet. Octet configuration. Octet means 8 electrons. Few elements in the periodic table, the first few elements, they have the tendency to form 2 electrons in their outermost shell. That is called duplet. Duplet means that is 2 electron configuration. For example, hydrogen, lithium, these lower members of the periodic table, they form duplet structure. So things we have to keep in mind is the valence electrons, they form chemical bond. And second thing, elements or atoms have a tendency to form octet. The octet rule also we have to remember. So Lewis suggested, the Cousel and Lewis suggestion states that the valence shell electrons, they are represented by either dots or cross around the atom. Suppose I am writing hydrogen atom and it is participating in chemical bond with its electron, the valence shell electron. That means I have to write the valence electron present in hydrogen atom, and I can present that with a dot symbol or with a cross symbol, and that is how a Lewis representation of valence electron is done. Let us do some more representations. Suppose I am taking sodium atom. Sodium, it has atomic number 11, so its electronic configuration is 2, 8, 1. So I'm writing only the valence electron of sodium as this. If I'm writing the valence electron of magnesium, it has 2 valence electrons, so I'll be placing 2 dots or 2 crosses around magnesium atom. Suppose oxygen atom, it has atomic number 8, its configuration is 2 and 6. So there are 6 valence electrons. I have to put this 6 valence electrons around oxygen atom like this. So this is how we have to represent the valence electrons initially, in the beginning, to understand chemical bonds. So let us discuss one by one the various types of chemical bond. Initially we will be discussing 3 major types of chemical bond, and these are ionic bond, the second one is covalent bond, and third one is coordinate covalent bond. Let us discuss them one by one. The first type of chemical bond is ionic bond. It is also called electrovalent bond. So what is an ionic bond? See, ion means it is a charged particle. So whenever ions stay together, they must carry opposite charge only, then only they will stay together. For example, a positive ion and a negative ion will attract each other and they will stay together. So we can define it as the attractive force that holds together opposite ions is called an ionic bond. Or we can also define it as the bond formed by complete transfer of one or more electrons from one atom to the other is called ionic bond. Let us understand this first. Suppose, let us take a very simple example, sodium chloride. This is the favorite of everybody and very common in HCl. So how this sodium chloride is formed? We'll be keeping in mind the octet rule and the Lewis structure also. Let us first write the valence electron of sodium around it. Sodium has 1 valence electron, so let us represent it by 1 cross symbol. And chlorine, it has 7 valence electrons, so I am putting 7 dots around chlorine atom. So this sodium atom, which has a configuration of 2, 8, 1, that means its third shell has 1 electron. If it donates this 1 electron, then it will have octet configuration in the previous shell. One more possibility is if it accepts 7 more electrons onto the third shell, then it will have octet configuration in the third shell. So which one is easier, to donate 1 electron or to accept 7 more electrons? Obviously, to donate 1 electron is much more easier than accepting 7 more electrons, and that is how sodium can donate this 1 electron easily. And this chlorine atom, it has atomic number 17, 2, 8, 7. So it has 7 electrons in its valence shell, which is the third shell. If it can accept 1 more electron, then it will have 8 electron in its third shell. One more possibility is, if it can donate these 7 more electrons to other atom, then it will have octet configuration in the previous shell. So obviously accepting 1 electron is much more easier, and that is how chlorine accepts 1 electron to satisfy its octet in the third shell. So whenever sodium and chlorine, they come close to each other, they decide that sodium should donate 1 electron to chlorine, so that chlorine has its octet and sodium also has its octet in the previous shell. And that is how sodium, by donating this 1 electron to chlorine, becomes a positive ion, and chlorine, by accepting this 1 electron, becomes a negative ion. So now there is a positive and negative ion in this configuration, in this structure, or in this picture, you can say. So now these opposite ions attract each other with a very strong electrostatic force, and that is how an ionic bond is formed. So we can define ionic bond as the attractive force that holds together opposite ions in a molecule or compound. Not molecule, it will be convenient, much more convenient to say in a compound. Attractive force that holds together opposite ions in a compound. That is how an ionic bond is formed. So here a positive ion attracts a negative ion, or we can say a negative ion attracts a positive ion. So we clearly saw here how a positive ion is created and how a negative ion is created. So positive ion is always created by the donation or release of an electron, 1 or more electrons, whereas a negative ion is generated by accepting 1 or more electrons, because electron carries a negative charge. When it is accepted by someone, that acquires a negative charge. When it is donated by someone, that acquires a positive charge. So let me write it again clearly. Sodium, it has configuration 281. By accepting some energy, it releases 1 electron and becomes a positive charge by releasing 1 electron. Chlorine, now sodium has 2-8 configuration. Chlorine has 2-8-7 configuration. It accepts 1 electron and becomes chloride ion. Now the configuration is 2-8-8 with the release of energy that is called electron affinity or electron gain enthalpy. So a positive ion is always formed by supplying energy, which we have to supply in the form of ionization energy, and a negative ion is formed with the release of energy, which we called as electron affinity, or we can call it as electron gain enthalpy, EGE, electron gain enthalpy, which we have studied in the previous chapter, the periodic classification. So now these two ions, they together form sodium chloride. You can note it down.